Welcome back to another episode of Locked In. Today, I'm with my good friend, Joe Boggs, very renowned football knowledge person, football knower, ball knower. Today, as you can see, he's got the Tennessee shirt on, big Vol fan right there. Knoxville, born and raised, pretty much. So we're going to be talking about Knoxville and Tennessee's spring game that went on in April 13th. And, I think there was a few things going into this game that you were looking for and a few things that were pretty solidified just looking at them from last year into this year. I think your biggest look was secondary, but with that, I think you first got to mention the O line, D line, because that's the first thing you noticed on the first play of the game. If you want to get into that more, Joe, because I know the thing was the D line looked great, so the O line not so much. Now, do you attribute that as the D line's that good, or is it like the O line's good? It's like, or they're like really bad. Like, how do you attribute that? What do you correlate that with?
Yeah. Excited to be here and talk some Tennessee football with you. I think it is definitely a mix of both. You've got a couple starters out on the O line today, just precautionary stuff, not wanting to take any risk. But your defensive line was pretty much at full force, and they set the tone early. First play of the game, got in the backfield in about half a second. Um, I think your starting five on the O line is going to be pretty solid, but like I said, we had some guys missing, and the D line just they showed their dominance. I think they're going to be one of the best units in the country. I think they'll hold their own with just about anybody, and I think they'll be the strength of your ball club this year.
Yeah, I know there's like two big things to mention with that D line, and that's James Pierce
Yeah.
and I'd say the loss of Tyler Barron. So I mean, um, like I know what your thoughts are. So let's hear them about Tyler Barron because I know you don't really care too much about that loss.
Okay. Well, obviously Tyler Barron was great for Tennessee. He's been great for like 2 years now. He's done nothing but produce. But if there's one thing that I've been super impressed with since Heupel's first year, even is our defensive front has been solid. A lot of that is attributed to Rodney Garner, our defensive line coach. He's one of the best in the business, but we've also recruited on that side of the ball at an elite level. Obviously, not up there with the Georgias and the Alabamas, but knocking right on their door. And when you can do that, and you've got a great D line coach, you're gonna develop guys. And as far as the Tyler Barron loss goes, we've got to the point where with recruiting and Rodney Garner as our coach, we've got guys like 9 or 10 guys that could play significant snaps at any school they wanted to, and we're deep in that position, so we can rotate guys, and that's why I think Tennessee would have fought a little harder to keep Barron. Um, Probably would have tried a little bit to make him an NIL deal or something to keep him on campus. But they said, we got some guys behind you we're confident in. We're ready to rock and roll with what we've got.
Yeah, no, that's I would definitely agree with you, based solely upon that Tennessee has the ability to pay whoever what they want. I mean, we saw it with Nico, and we've saw it with a few more players, pretty open in the public about it. I mean, it's even in court. So I mean, if they really wanted Tyler Barron that bad, they would have definitely paid him. So I mean, I really get that. You can't really pay Tyler Barron more than Tennessee could. So I mean, I do agree. I do get that. So the last thing to talk about with their D line is their aggression. Is it a good thing or bad thing? Because I know, they got back there in 0.5 seconds, but they also had like five offensive or offsides penalties today.
Yeah, at points it was a little sloppy, but I think that was mostly your second, third team guys off the edge most of the time, and those guys, those guys off the edge, they're looking to get after the quarterback. But the thing is about those guys, they're pretty young, sophomores or freshmen for the most part, so that's just stuff they're going to have to learn, and I'm very confident they'll get that in check by the time fall comes around. But I think it's definitely a positive for the defense as a whole because your secondary, you're bringing in new people. Jermod McCoy's probably going to be one of your starting corners. He's a transfer. Did great things at Oregon State. He's transferring in, and then behind him you've got Jalen McMurray, and then a bunch of young guys who are coming in. And when you've got a defensive line that can pressure the quarterback and force him to get it out quick, your secondary doesn't have to cover for as long, which that eliminates the explosive plays, getting beat deep. So I think it's definitely a plus and helps a youthful secondary.
Yeah, I definitely think that also helps your run support with them being able to play closer to the ball, them and
Yeah.
linebackers as well. So I think that that really helps out a lot. Now, is there anybody returning in that secondary? Because I don't think so.
You've got Andre Turrentine. He may be one of your starting safeties, but he didn't see the field a lot last year. He saw the field in the bowl game, because Wesley Walker at that point, our free safety, had already announced he was hitting the portal. Or he was about to announce. So he wasn't invested for the bowl game. So Turrentine got out there. He's actually the guy who made the interception when Iowa was like on the 3-yard lines. So good things there, but not a lot of sample size to know what he's going to bring. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Ricky Gibson, he's going to be a sophomore this year. He played a little bit, looked very good in the time that he did play, but just not a lot of playing time to be able to base anything off of it.
Yeah, so with them growing pains, I think you're right about the D line being able to help that out, and I think that's why they are so aggressive, and I think you'll continue to see that. They just need to work the kinks out with the penalties, and they'll be fine. But I'm sure they'll have some punishment for that to fix that. Keep it on the defensive side of the ball. I know linebackers are pretty hurt and banged up right now, like the O line at Tennessee. So we kind of get into this new faces linebackers talk because number 47 today. Let's talk about Edwin Spillman.
Yeah, I was so pleased with what I saw out of Edwin Spillman. Just looking at the guy, he looks SEC ready. He's quick, and I mean he's muscled up. He's an SEC linebacker, and coming out of practice, you've heard reports that even his coach has said this. He's a guy that you don't have to get him hyped up. He's one of those guys that you're having to tell, hey, chill out a little bit. you know. So he's a high energy guy. He's going to play hard and he's going to lay the wood. So like that's exactly what Tennessee needs. We need a guy with some speed paired with that defensive line, and with a little bit of pass coverage capabilities. That's exactly what we need. Um, can't say that he'll start this year because he's got guys like Keenan Peely and Arian Carter and Elijah Herring and Jeremiah Telander ahead of him. But that is a guy who, if you need him, I'm fully confident in his ability to come in there and make some plays.
Yeah, physically a freak, and it's not only the physical traits that you saw today. It's the mental ability to be where the ball is going to be and to know pursuit angles. I mean, just the little intricacies of the game. Um, I mean, also speaking of new faces, just throw them out there from around that Knoxville, Tennessee area. Almost Boo Carter. What about Boo Carter today? I know that's a big name coming out of Tennessee this year.
Yeah. Expect Boo to be your punt returner and kick returner. Guy's just electric with the ball in his hands. But on defense today, man, he looked good. He was with the twos today. But he's pushing the guy ahead of him. He's making him have to work to keep his spot. But I saw Boo come up and he was far more physical than what I expected. I was very happy with that. Like a physical safety with some speed, that's a very good thing to have. He came up, made some plays in the run game, and then when guys were making catches across the middle, it wasn't long before Boo Carter let them know that you may not want to come back in here again.
Yeah, and I think you could see that a little bit in high school. I think it's just one of those things. Will it translate to college? Because I know he went to Bradley Central this past year. Watched him against Oakland, which is a very good football team, 6A as well in the playoffs this year. And that's one thing you could really point out about him. Not his coverage or anything. I know he's elusive as all get out, but the biggest thing you could really see there is he can tackle really well and he comes downhill. He's very physical. I know that's one of the key things because I mean Oakland has some boys, especially their running back that are going to big time schools. They usually have them. So I mean, I think that's one thing to point out. He can really help down in them first, second downs, or them goal line situations even. But I think Buchard will probably see some reps this year. Um, I think we've talked enough about defense. Let's get into the exciting part of Tennessee football that really makes them fan favorite for most people, Pat McAfee included. Uh, so we'll start with Nico. I think he had a pretty good day today. You really only see reps of him in the Iowa game, dinking and dunking because that's what Iowa gives them. First actually collegiate start. So I mean that's warranted. One deep ball, take what they give you, win the game. I think he did a good job against Iowa. So today we really got to see him air it out. And with all that experience from the off season, what did you think about Nico today? Because I was impressed.
Went out there, did what he did. It's a spring game, the coaching staff's going to keep it pretty vanilla. So Nico went out there, executed. I think I saw a stat at once that said he was like 6 of 6. That could be wrong, but I believe I saw that. That was like halfway through the game, so I'm sure it changed by the end of it. But that's pretty solid start. But like I said, he went out there and did what he needed to do, made smart decisions, didn't put the ball in danger. And then, he did that with that ferocious defensive line coming in his face, coming at him. And then, you know, I was impressed with the backup quarterbacks as well. But for Nico, like talking on the coaches being vanilla and stuff, for him, it was just a bunch of 5-yard curls, run up the middle. They actually opened the offense up a little bit more for Gaston Moore and Jake Merklinger, and they did the same thing last year for Nico. It was very vanilla for Joe, but Nico got a little bit more of the exciting plays called for him. So yeah, I think Nico went out there, executed, did what he needed to do, and then I think the backup quarterbacks flashed as well and showed you that they can go out there and they can compete if you need them to.
Yeah, I was gonna say freshman in Merkingler, and I mean he looked pretty good, and also the dude who's about to graduate from UCF that traveled with Heupel, Gaston Moore.
Yeah.
Um, I think both of them. I think we could agree both of them could really make you a playoff contender, even if God forbid something happens to Nico, because I know that's what most people worry about with Nico in the SEC. He runs a lot, and I mean he's 6'6" and skinny. He's about a 205, 15 pounds, somewhere around there. I know he's put on a little more weight in the offseason, but still, SEC is different. He's a little skinny for what I'm sure they want him to be, but he has to be to have that elusivity and his quickness that he does have. So I mean, I know they worry about that, but I think Tennessee will be in good hands with the backup QB.
Yeah, like I said, if something horrible was to happen and Nico goes down, that I'm confident in those guys' ability to come in and give you a chance to win. I think, say if Nico got hurt, late in the year and you're competing, for a playoff spot, Gaston Moore is going to be your guy that you go to get those wins. But if something were to happen early in the year, I think Merklinger is going to be the guy, try to, get him experience to build for the future, that type of deal. But yeah, both of those guys looked very smooth today. Merklinger showed off some athleticism with a 26-yard touchdown run. Refs probably should have blown that dead, but still, it was good to see. Those guys are capable and, they're good backup options.
Yeah, and to keep in line with the quarterbacks, I really think I know you mentioned it to me, but like the way they called plays and the way they schemed things up when it was Joe Milton on as your quarterback compared to Nico, just
Yeah.
because Joe Milton, he has a big arm, he's a freak, but he's very limited, especially with his mental capabilities with reading and processing a field. So, I want to see what you have to say about the difference between his plays that he got called for and Nico's play calling.
Yeah. It was evident even in the Iowa game last year in the bowl game. Just to start off, Joe Milton is the perfect Tennessee Volunteer. He chose Tennessee when, a lot of other schools would have been interested after he sat behind Hendon Hooker. So I ain't got anything bad to say about Joe, but you can tell that the coaching staff is willing to be more dynamic with Nico. With Joe, you know, it was screen after screen after inside zone, maybe the occasional deep ball. And with Nico, you just didn't see that much. You saw us attack the intermediate passes in the Iowa game, and you saw a lot. And it surprised me. You saw Nico run a lot in the Iowa game. He had 3 rushing touchdowns, and they were pretty much all designed except for one of them. And then he looked good doing it. I mean, his speed was sneaky speed. So that's something I didn't see a lot of today, though. They didn't run him a lot today. Obviously, it's no contact, but maybe they're limiting that because he is the starter this year. But yeah, to get back on the topic here, I think you can expect a lot more dynamic plays to be called for Nico this year. I think we're going to attack the middle of the field. I think Nico can process and read a defense a little quicker than Joe. And last year, you would see sometimes Joe would make the right read, but it would be a split second late and the ball would be behind or the DB would be in position by that point. Or he just wouldn't see it at all. There was a couple times we'd have guys running wide open down the seam and, Joe wouldn't see it. So, yeah, I think the offense under Nico is going to be different looking than what it was last year. I think it'll look like Hendon Hooker type of numbers this year.
Yeah, if not even better. Because
Yeah.
I know, like you mentioned, throwing up like them vertical seam routes being open and intermediate. I know that, that's one of the things that I noticed looking at his film is that he was kind of scared to pass it over the middle of the field. Which, I mean, granted, a lot of quarterbacks are nowadays. So even Penix tends to, target the outside of the hashes.
Yeah.
Some quarterbacks just can't do it, and I understand it because there's a lot going on over the middle of the field, especially nowadays with people playing too high with 2 safeties and 2 or 3 linebackers. So I definitely understand it. But Nico's one of them guys. He can put it in there. He can put it in them small windows and process it where he's throwing in time and on rhythm. Now I think you are right to mention the difference between the running game because Joe Milton's a big dude. He's athletic, he's fast, but you didn't see him run the ball a lot this past year. And Nico's known for his elusivity and running the ball very well, along with his cannon of an arm. But I think one thing you saw in today's game, I know you said he didn't run a lot, and he didn't, if at all, really. I know he ran him once at least. I did see that, but when he did his inside zones, because I know you talk about Milton doing his inside zones, it like he had the option to keep it. I know he didn't, because it's spring game. I get it. You're not going to keep it in the spring game, but you saw Joe Milton have that same ability last year, but he never pull it down and keep it. Even when he's looking at an end, crashing down straight down the line of scrimmage after the run back, he is not pulling that thing. He is handing it off. And
And
I
the
think
only time that he did pull it the whole year was against UTSA, first play of the game, and he housed it 80 yards.
that's
I
what I'm
mean,
saying. So I
and
think
go
you're
ahead.
right to point that out about Nico because he can read that better. He can look at that end and see that he can read that a lot better. So I'm sure he will be pulling it a lot more than Joe did. And even so, I'm sure he can baseball slide. If not, they need to teach that man.
I think he's more confident in it as well. I think Joe was more than capable. Joe was more than capable, and like in that play that I mentioned, the 80-yard touchdown. I mean, Joe's fast, but you could tell he's just an awkward runner when he's got the ball in his hands. So I think Nico's he's smooth as silk. I think he's confident in his abilities, and I think he'll trust himself to make the right play when it comes.
Yeah. Um, to go in line with your quarterbacks, I think one of the big questions this year is who's he's going to throw it to, Nico, that is, because I know you lose Ramel Keaton. I know everybody's big on Squirrel White, but he also has a tendency to not be able to catch the ball. So I mean, there's big things with that. I know Brew's hurt, but he's coming back. I look at Brew as more of a third down possession guy, though. When you really need him, he's going to end up getting you a possession catch. Not really one of those explosive guys, but that consistent catch guy. So you talk about having Hendon Hooker a few years ago, and Tennessee being prominent again, and really making a comeback out of things with Heupel. Well, you look at the receivers, and it's Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman. So you have that dynamic duo right there, and it's like, who's your receivers going to be this year? Just to throw a few out there, I know we've covered them on this channel. Chris Brazzell, transfer from Tulane, very good. And then who else would you like to add in? Because I know there's a few.
All right. So, by the way, Brew is in practice. He's participating. It's just a precautionary thing today, I believe. But as far as receivers, man, last year, the past 2 or 3 years, Tennessee, they've had a rotation. They do 3 guys, and if you're the fourth guy, you're lucky to get more than 3 snaps an entire game. But this year, man, Tennessee's wide receiver room, I mean, it's 8 or 9 deep with good talent. I mean, you're looking at your starting 3 that's going to be out there, and it's probably going to be Brew McCoy and Squirrel White in the slot, and then Dante Thornton and Brazzell. I believe, from everything that I've been hearing coming out of camp, I believe that Thornton and Brazzell are going to be competing, and both of those guys have been making plays all throughout spring. Brazzell looked phenomenal today. Didn't see Thornton get the ball as much, and I think that could be telling because, like I said, Thornton didn't get a lot of targets, but Brazzell did. Brazzell seemed to be Nico's go-to today. So look into that for what you will. I think he's got a good chance of cracking the starting lineup. But then behind those guys, you've got 2 true freshmen in Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley who have just been lighting it up. Mike Matthews was the guy who I had my eye on today. Big time recruit. So was Braylon Staley, but Mike Matthews was big time, big time. I was excited to see him today, and he made a play. He caught a deep ball for a touchdown against a young, scary secondary. But I was excited to see him get on the field. And then Staley didn't participate today. Precautionary. He's fine. He's been participating in practice. But yeah, our receivers behind the D line is probably the second most dominant group on this team. I would not be surprised if you see 2 or 3 guys hit the portal because they're stuck. I mean, the guys ahead of them, there's so many guys ahead of them that can compete. Like Nathan Laycock, great recruit coming out of high school. He hasn't seen a lot of action here at Tennessee. He's a sophomore this year. He's a guy that you could see hop into the portal because guys like Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley have jumped over top of him in the rotation.
Yeah, and that is one thing to point out. I know you said that they don't get a lot of reps, because I mean the way they run their offense, usually they have like a dead side and a play side just to give, because I mean they're a high tempo offense, so one side of the field's usually dead. And I know a lot of people figure that out, but they also have them vertical choice routes, so they're running vertical a lot, and vertical switches. So I mean, I think that's one thing to really point out is that they really only do have like 3 or 4 guys that'll be catching the ball at any given time. So I mean, you could see a few guys leave in this portal window that's opening Monday,
Yeah,
which is very
and
soon.
a lot of that, the reason they only play 3 or 4 guys, it really, in my opinion, boils down to the tempo that we like to play at.
Yeah, no
Tennessee's whole thing
substitutions.
is no subs because if you sub a wide receiver out, the defense can sub in fresh legs on that defensive front, and that's Tennessee's whole thing. We want to wear you down and get you tired, and then we got to have 3 guys that we can trust out there so we don't have to sub. But in the past 3 years, it's been 3 guys the whole game. They've been in the whole game. I think this year you may see like almost hockey. You may see your starters get a couple series, and then when you want to get those other guys in because they're more than capable, you'll see them be in for an entire series so that you don't have to sub. And then after that series is over, you'll probably get your starters back in. They'll stay in. So I don't think there will be any subbing mid drive because that's just not what Tennessee wants to do.
Yeah,
Uh,
no.
but I think that you will see more guys get a chance on the field this year for sure. But Heupel said the past 3 years we've got about 6 guys we want to rotate at the wide receiver position, and then he hasn't done it. It's been the same 3 guys.
Yeah, and maybe they'll get away from that dead side and the play side that they've done because I know they people started to figure that out, which is why that and the quarterback change is why they really had to change their offense up a lot. So we'll see about that. Speaking of ball catchers, who is going to be the tight end? I know there's a few guys that are all new, especially the one from Notre Dame, Stace.
Yeah, Holden Stace, he was wearing number 19 today. Uh, just very impressed with his build. I mean, he looks like an SEC tight end. Transferred from Notre Dame, had a good year there, but we were able to get him through the portal. And then we've got a true sophomore named Ethan Davis. Didn't get a lot of playing time last year because he was behind McCowan Castles and Jacob Warren, but he's more than capable. He was a highly touted 4-star out of high school. So he and Holden Stace are probably competing for the starting job. But both of those guys are going to see the field a lot. Tennessee, we do rotate tight ends. We don't rotate wide receivers, but we do tight ends. And then behind them, we saw number 88 today make some plays. I believe his name is Charlie Browder. He looked solid. He looked like he could come in and make plays when needed. And then we've also got a guy, I believe, transferred from Alabama named Miles Kitselman. I don't know if I saw him a lot today, but I've heard good things about him coming out of practice, transferred from Bama. So you know that the talent's got to be there. If you were recruited to Alabama, you're talented. So maybe Tennessee's tight end coach can get a hold of him and get him up and going too.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think the best way to end this would be to talk about what really got Tennessee, through last year, which was their running game. I know the O line plays a lot into that, but so does elite, runners of the ball.
Yeah.
I know Sampson is back, and he's been talked about at Tennessee for years, just upcoming, because he's usually had a few people over him like Small and Wright.
Yeah.
But Sampson, when his time was to shine, he did shine.
Yeah.
But with the thing being said about that, usually in college football nowadays, it's split back because you know it's hard to run 20 times a game or 30 times a game these days, especially putting that wear and tear. And kids don't want to do that, especially when careers are so short in the NFL already. Less reps, the more longevity they'll have in the league. So who's really going to be that number 2, number 3 running back that's going to rotate in with Sampson and be the lightning and thunder with them?
Um, I would tell you that your number 2 as of right now, he's banged up right now, didn't take part in spring game, will be Cameron Seldon. Very highly touted recruit out of high school, 4-star. He's very athletic. I mean, he's got all the tools. It's just last year I noticed his vision was lacking. Maybe that's something as he's matured, had another year in the system, his vision will be better. And behind him, you probably got Deshaun Bishop. He was Mr. Football in the state of Tennessee coming out of high school, set all types of rushing records. So he's a very capable guy. And I've liked what I've seen from him. He's a physical runner. He's pretty north and south. I think he can come in and he can do the job. He reminds me kind of Jabari Small. I mean, he doesn't have just breakaway speed. Jabari, that's a tough loss to lose because he's a good physical back, but he didn't have the breakaway speed that a guy like Jalen Wright had, as displayed a couple times last year on some long touchdown runs. And then you've got behind him a guy, Khalifa Keith, who very physical, big. If you need a guy to get you a yard, he's probably your guy. And then you've got a true freshman in Peyton Lewis, who's grease lightning fast. I mean, the guy can fly. So he's fighting for some reps as well. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get in there. But as far as your number two goes, I would lock in Cameron Seldon, and then your number three will probably be Deshaun Bishop. And then, like you said, Dylan Sampson, I'm expecting a lot out of him this year. He carried us in the Kentucky game last year. Expecting a lot out of him, fully confident in his abilities. One of the biggest leaders in the locker room and on the field, he's more than capable to be an all SEC type of player.
Yeah, I expect to see Tennessee run a different type of offense this year. More so like Hendon Hooker's year where he was elite that year with him, but kind of a hybrid with the way they did it last year, running the ball so much. I really think it'll be something mixed in between the two to, get this perfect formula with Nico to try to make a playoff push and win a national championship. Because that needs to be done either this year or next year because Nico's probably going to go to the draft, and I know you got good talent behind him, but it's like you're paying this guy $8 million. We're trying to get a ring here, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean that should be apparent. So you're really trying to see a push out of that. Said I think the Vols had a really good spring game. They had a good crowd. Crowd's always going to be there in Knoxville. They got a good home slate at the end of the year. Start off the year a little rocky in the SEC, going to a lot of away games though, against your harder opponents, in my opinion. So, I think if they can get through that first little stretch, I think they'll be really good in the home stretch to close out and go into the playoffs this year. So, I mean, I think there's a lot to look forward to. Is there anything else you'd like to mention before we close out, Joe?
Yeah. One guy we didn't game plan on Zalance Hurd, our left tackle out of the portal, big time recruit out of high school. I mean, that guy could start pretty much anywhere except LSU because he's behind probably a first round pick over there. So he transferred because he was stuck behind somebody that's really good, and I would just expect the left tackle to position to improve this year with our starting left tackle from last year bumping over to right tackle. That's just one thing I wanted to add.
Yeah, yeah. I think that O line will be more shored up by the time the end of August comes, start of September, because a lot of them are hurt or just getting into the system. So I mean, I think that'll be more shored up by then, even if it didn't look so hot today. At the same time, I think that D line is going to be a top D line. I know they were last year, and that's one of the things there at Tennessee. They might, like you said, they might not be recruiting the top of the top in every position. But I mean, look at what Jim Harbaugh did. He didn't have the elite talent that all the other schools did, but he still won an Natty just because of the coaching ability by all them coaches. So I like to see Hop on them do something along the lines of that, and at least even make a playoff push like I think they should. So I think a lot of great things coming out of Knoxville this coming up year. And with that being said, for us here, stay locked in, everyone.
Yep.